Mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says, never forget the goal, never stop aspiring, never halt in your progress, and you're sure to succeed. With always our love and blessings, is our Divine Mother. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, Book 1, The Book of Beginnings, Canto 3, The Yoga of the Soul's Release, page 40, last line. All here must learn to obey a higher law. Our body cells must hold the immortal's flame. Else would the spirit reach alone its source, leaving a half-saved world to its dubious fate. Nature would ever labor unredeemed. Our earth would ever spin unhelped in space, and this immense creation's purpose fail, till at last the frustrate universe sank undone. Prayers and Meditations. Date November 26, 1912. What a hymn of thanksgiving should I not be raising at each moment unto Thee. Everywhere and in everything around me, Thou revealest Thyself, and in me Thy will and consciousness express themselves always more and more clearly, even to the point of my having almost entirely lost the gross illusion of me and mine. If a few shadows, a few flaws can be seen in the great light which manifests Thee, how shall they bear for long the marvelous brightness of Thy resplendent love? This morning, the consciousness that I had of the way Thou art fashioning this being, which was I, can be roughly represented by a great diamond cut with regular geometrical facets, a diamond in its cohesion, firmness, pure limpidity, transparency, but a brilliant and radiant flame in its intense, ever progressive light. But it was something more, something better than all that, for nearly all sensation, inner and outer, was exceeded, and that image only presented itself to my mind as I returned to conscious contact with the outer world. It is Thou that makest the experience fertile, Thou who renderest life progressive, Thou who compellest the darkness to vanish in an instant before the light, Thou who givest to love all its power, Thou who everywhere raisest up matter in this ardent and wonderful aspiration, in this sublime thirst for eternity. Thou everywhere and always, nothing but Thou in the essence and in the manifestation. Thou everywhere and always, nothing but Thou in the essence and in the manifestation. O shadow and illusion, dissolve. O suffering, fade and disappear. Lord Supreme, art thou not there? Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, taken from the collective works of our Lord Sri Aurobindo compilations book, The Hidden Forces of Life, topic, The Psyche. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, at the beginning, the soul in nature, the psychic entity whose unfolding is the first step towards a spiritual change, is an entirely veiled part of us, although it is that by which we exist and persist as individual beings in nature. The other parts of our natural composition are not only mutable but perishable, but the psychic entity in us persists and is fundamentally the same always. It contains all essential possibilities of our manifestation, but it is not constituted by them. It is not limited by what it manifests, not contained by the incomplete forms of the manifestation, not tarnished by the imperfections and impurities, the defects and deprivations of the surface being. Our psychic being is an ever pure flame of the divinity in things, and nothing that comes to it, nothing that enters into our experience can pollute its purity or extinguish the flame. This spiritual stuff is immaculate and luminous, and because it is perfectly luminous, it is immediately, intimately, directly aware of truth of the being and the truth of nature. It is deeply conscious of truth, good and beauty, because truth and good and beauty are akin to its own native character, forms of something that is inherent in its own substance. It is aware also of all that contradicts these things, of all that deviates from its own native character, of falsehood and evil and ugly and the unseemly. But it does not become these things, nor is it touched or changed by these opposites of itself, which so powerfully affect its outer instrumentation of mind, life, and body. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, for the soul, the permanent being in us, puts forth and uses mind, life, and body as its instruments, undergoes the envelopment of their conditions, but it is other and greater than its members. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, if the psychic entity had been from the beginning unveiled and known to its ministers, not a secluded king in a screened chamber, the human evolution would have been a rapid soul outflowering, not the difficult, checkered, and disfigured development it is now. But the veil is thick, and we know not the secret light within us, the light in the hidden crypt of the heart's innermost sanctuary. Intimations rise to our surface from the side, but our mind does not detect their source. It takes them for its own activities because before even they come to the surface, they are clothed in mental substance, thus ignorant of their authority. It follows or does not follow them according to its bent or turn at the moment. If the mind, says our Lord, obeys the urge of the vital ego, then there is the little chance of the psyche at all controlling the nature or manifesting in us something of its secret spiritual stuff and native moment. Or if the mind is overconfident to act in its own smaller light, attached to its own judgment, will, and action of knowledge, then also the soul will remain veiled and quiescent and wait for the mind's further evolution. For the psychic part within is there to support the natural evolution, and the first natural evolution must be the development of body, life, and mind successively, and these must act each in its own kind or together in their ill assorted partnership in order to grow and have experience and evolve. And Lord Sri Aurobindo says, the soul gathers the essence of all our mental, vital, and body experience and assimilates it for the further evolution of our existence in nature. But this action is occult and not obtruded on the surface. In the early material and vital stages of evolution of the being, there is indeed no consciousness of the soul. There are psychic activities, but the instrumentation, the form of these activities are vital and physical, or the mental when the mind is active. For even the mind, so long as it is primitive or is developed but still too external, does not recognize this deeper character. It is easy to regard ourselves as physical beings or beings of life or mental beings using life and body, and to ignore the existence of the soul altogether. For the only definite idea that we have of the soul is of something that survives the death of our bodies. But what this is, we do not know, because even if we are conscious sometimes of its presence, we are normally not conscious of its distinct reality, nor do we feel clearly its direct action in our nature. As the evolution proceeds, nature begins slowly and tentatively to manifest our occult parts. She leads us to look more and more within ourselves, or sets out to initiate some clearly recognizable intimations and formations of them on the surface. The soul in us, the psychic principle, has already begun to take a secret form. It puts forward and develops a soul personality, a distinct psychic being to represent it. The psychic being remains still behind the veil in our subliminal path, like the true mental, vital, or the subtle physical being within us. But like them, it acts on the surface life by the influence and intimations it throws us up upon that surface. These form part of the surface aggregate, which is the conglomerative effect of the inner influences and upsurgings, the visible formation and superstructure which we ordinarily experience and think of as ourselves. On this ignorant surface, we become firmly aware of something that can be called as soul as distinct from mind, life, or body. We feel it not only as our mental idea or vague distinct instinct of ourselves, but as a sensible influence in our life and character and action. A certain sensitive feeling for all that is true, good, and beautiful, fine and pure and noble, a response to it, a demand for it, a pressure on mind and life to accept and formulate it in our thought, feelings, conduct, character is the most usually recognized. The general and characteristic, though not the sole sign of its influence of the psyche. Of the man who has not this element in him, does not respond at all to this urge, we call or say that he has no soul. For it is this influence that we can most easily recognize as a finer or even a diviner part in us, and the most powerful for the slow turning towards some aim at perfection in our nature. But this psychic influence or action does not come up to the surface quite pure or does not remain distinct in its purity. If it did, we would be able to distinguish clearly the soul element in us and follow consciously and fully its dictates. An occult, mental, vital, and subtle physical intervenes, mixes with it, tries to use it, and turn to its own profit, dwarfs its divinity, distorts or diminishes its self expression, even causes it to deviate and stumble, or stains it with the impurity, smallness, and error of mind, life, and body. Our Lord says, after it reaches the surface, thus alloyed and diminished, it is taken hold of by the surface nature in an obscure reception and ignorant formation. There is, or can be by this cause, a still further deviation and mixture. A twist is given, a wrong direction is imparted, a wrong application, wrong formation, erroneous result of what is in itself pure stuff and action of our spiritual being. A formation of consciousness is accordingly made, which is a mixture of the psychic influence and its intimations jumbled with the mental ideas, opinions, vital desires, urges, habitual physical tendencies. There coalesce too with the obscure soul influence the ignorant though well intentioned efforts of these external paths towards a higher direction, a mixed character, often obscure with its idealism, sometimes even disastrously mistaken, a fervor and passion of the emotional being, throwing up its spray and foam of feelings, sentiments, enthusiasm of the life paths, eager responses of the physical, and the thrill and excitement of the nerves and the body, all these influences in a composite form which is taken frequently as a soul is mixed, confused action for the soul stir, for a psychic development and action or a realized inner influence. Our Lord says the psychic entity is itself free from strain. The psychic entity is in itself free from stain or a mixture, but what comes up from it is not protected by this or that immunity. Therefore, this confusion becomes possible. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says about psychic being in the book Letters on Yoga, part 1, and says, the psychic part of us is something that comes direct from the divine and is in touch with the divine. In its origin, it is the nucleus, pregnant with divine possibilities, that supports this lower triple manifestation. There is this divine element in all living beings, but it stands hidden behind the ordinary consciousness, is not at first developed, and even when developed is not always or often in the front. It expresses itself so far as the imperfection of the instrument allows by their means and under their limitations. It grows in the consciousness by Godward experience, gaining strength every time there is a higher moment in us, and finally, by the accumulation of these deeper and higher moments, there is developed a psychic individuality, that which we usually call the psychic being. It is always this psychic being that is real, though often the secret cause of man's turning to the spiritual life, and this greater help in it. It is therefore that which we have to bring from behind to the front in the yoga, in integral yoga, says our Lord Sri Aurobindo.